Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm Jose.
And we're talking about the third Small Axe film, Red, White and Blue, which, like the first, Mangrove, is about the legal system in the UK and an attempt to combat its racism, this time from the other side. So Mangrove was about the Mangrove 9 fighting abuse by the police, civilians, and this is about a guy, Leroy Logan, who was a real guy, played by John Boyega in this, who joins the police force as a beat cop. He's actually a forensic scientist working for them, you see, early on. But he gives that up, joins the police as a beat cop with the express intention of trying to combat its racism from the inside. For my money, it's the least impressive of the three we've seen so far. I think it's the least complex.
Oh, I don't know about that. I mean, I may agree with you, yeah, but we're speaking about such a high level, that, I mean, I think this is an amazing film. I
think it's great, and it sounds like such a backhanded compliment, but I really don't mean it like this. I think it's great for it to be on TV. I think it's for people who really don't understand the kind of relationship that black people have with the police, especially in this country. I think it's a great thing to be able to see that on TV. So his dad in this is arrested and beaten by the cops for literally doing nothing. He parks his truck on the side of the road, and he's allowed to park there, and he even has the tape measure to prove that he's within the regulations, and they beat him nonetheless. And they really don't have a leg to stand on, as the film goes on to sort of describe. That kind of thing, people probably don't believe happens.
Well, but, I mean, so there's two things. First, it's good that it's on TV, that it makes people aware of systemic racism in Britain, a history of systemic racism, and also a history of small acts that resist that racism and try to overturn it. But aside from that, I also think this is a great film. It uses almost experimental techniques to draw attention to particular things in a very beautiful way that I also found very moving.
Go on.
So, for example, just little details like when you're introduced to the family and they're having dinner together, what you see is these extreme close-ups of patterns, of almost like 1970s carpets and jumpers, right? And it's like this abstraction, right? And then this abstraction becomes concrete reality, and you see, that it's like a Caribbean home, and actually the colors are different, but also it's extremely neat. So you have these close-ups of this covering of the juice jar, embroidered with beads, like absolutely pristine white, So, kind of all of this detail, which it really is almost abstract. It's like in such big close-ups that it takes you a while for your eyes to adjust to figure out what it is and what is happening. And all of a sudden, kind of, you get a view of this family, this upright family, this hardworking family that's inculcated these values, in their children, which, kind of then makes being the victim of police abuse all the stronger. Another thing that really caught my eye was, when they're in the hospital and Leroy's wife is pregnant, and you get that close-up of the scan. Is it a scan or the x-ray? What shows the baby?
The ultrasound.
The ultrasound of the baby, beating, right? And it's held just, almost too long, like or what could be too long, So it's drawing attention to this. It's kind of, making you aware of, both the beauty of life, also something that's unformed and in the process of, getting shape, and The other moment that really caught my eye was when Leroy is chasing that criminal across the factory floor, and basically you have this steady cam, doing these figure eights, which really highlight the danger and the tension, and kind of you don't know what he's seeing, and you get glimpses of what he's seeing on the corner of the eye, but just the choreography of that extreme long shot with the steady cam to create suspense, I thought was significant and extraordinary. There was also the moment where the father drives his son to the police station. The camera remains in the car, right? So you're seeing it from the outside, and you see like kind of this fumbling, and finally this awkward embrace, right? It was so moving, right? And you think, some cheap American director would have like pushed the camera in for, a close-up, on some, how do you call those machines that fly, yeah?
Drone.
Yeah, they would have put the camera in a drone to get like a sweeping embrace. No, this is outside, it's tactful, and it shows the awkwardness, and, it allows you to kind of feel the emotion. I mean, I just thought it was like great.
Doesn't it recall the shot, isn't it one of the first shots, maybe the first shot of the film, where a very young Leroy, who's like maybe 8 years old, he stood outside his school waiting for his dad to pick him up, and he's approached by cops. And isn't that scene from inside the cop car?
Some of it certainly.
Yeah,
is.
not the whole thing.
Yeah,
It starts off like that,
Yeah.
and then the dad approaches and tells the cops to stuff it, basically.
Yeah,
teaches his son.
And actually, in relation to, you've just reminded me, in relation to what we've just seen, the Mank, right?
Mm-hmm.
This was such a great opening, right? You see a kid outside on his own. You're already wondering what the hell's going on. Why is he on his own? Blah, blah, blah.
Well, no, I didn't wonder that. I mean, he was in school uniform. I think he was waiting to be picked up. He was
Anyway.
outside school.
Then the cops come in, and it raises all of these questions. When the father comes in, it raises a further set of questions. I think it's dramatic.
Yeah, it's dramatic. That's for sure.
And of course, then the father says that speech where he's saying something like, "I don't want you." I forget what the expression he uses because it's a Caribbean expression that I can't remember, but it was like basically, be respectful of the police, yeah, but don't bring them in my backyard, is what he says, right? And actually, then the whole film is about that tension, overturning that tension, so I think it's fantastic.
I was reading a little bit just now before we start the podcast about what's real and what's not. There was an article on Slate I was looking at that kind of breaks down the basis in reality. I'm not going to go into it because it seems like largely the details appear to be true, at least appear to be true to the real Leroy Logan's account, which he wrote in a memoir recently. One or two things have changed. I think maybe the most important seems to be that in the film it's suggested that the kind of key sort of catalyst in Leroy applying to join the police force as a beat cop is his dad's unlawful abuse and arrest by the police. And it appears that, like in real life, that happened while his application was already sort of underway, and maybe it sort of made him question whether he wanted it. But so that's kind of reversed, which I think kind of has is pretty much fair. It makes it a little bit more dramatic and intriguing, and kind of draws the father and son. So it has an interesting impact on the father and son relationship because the dad is, like you say, all about keep the police out of the backyard, and when he finds out that Leroy has applied to the police, he's shocked and angry, and that kind of really carries on for the rest of the film up until the final scene. So the fact that in the film his abuse at the hands of the police is a catalyst for that I think adds on to that tension. That like he is kind of directly responsible.
I mean, I was thinking about it because I was very moved by it. Because I think it has other ramifications. Yeah, so, you get a sense of immigrants and, kind of people coming from different cultures and a different language. And so, there's already like a perception of outsiderness. And, I was thinking like, this is a film that is so intelligent, right? It's dramatizing these cultures and these cross-cultural kind of elements. But it's also very empathetic. It allows you to feel, and incites you to feel in a way that doesn't feel cheated, that's really well earned. And then I think it's beautiful, like, kind of some of the things just formally, kind of that I've been describing, I think are beautiful and imaginative, and kind of expressive. So,
What I liked the most was, I always respond well to humour, and it's got lots of good jokes. It's got a good Jedi joke, and I really, really responded to the things that I recognised from, because this is set in the early 80s, so it's kind of, because I was born in late 80s, and this is the stuff that's still here. The stuff that's here is stuff that I'm starting to recognise from my youth. It kind of lasted until the 90s. So like the way the cars looked and behaved, kind of recognise the air freshener. I said to you, I doubt you have any idea what that air freshener is, but I've seen that air freshener, the traffic light air freshener. I know it off by heart. And the beat test, which I told you about, and I asked you because I didn't know if it was a particularly British thing.
It must be.
You have no.
Yeah, but mind you, sports at our school was such a like we didn't have it basically. So
but anyone who did PE in the UK certainly will have done the bleep test at one point in their life, where it speeds up and speeds up and speeds up, and you literally die. Not literally.
You're still here.
So that stuff I really enjoyed, and also things like the way I think the scene setting is extremely good, and I mean. What I really mean by that is production design, set design. I mean, it beautifully evokes the era. Everything seems easily recognisable and so evocative. It takes so little work to kind of believe in the world. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
And then the music adds on to that. It's got an incredible jukebox soundtrack.
Actually, I think the music in all three films that we've seen before is sublime, and including in this one, which is so all of the emotive element is Al Green. Al Green is used throughout, except for a few dance tracks in between.
There's a bit of Billy Joel.
There's a bit of Billy Joel. There's a bit of like dance music, but the consistent thing is the use of Al Green, and it's just beautiful. And I think the way it's used is beautiful. I think also there are interesting touches, right? So, the father is into country music, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas the son is into like British, kind of dance music. Yeah. And then, of course, what you get at the end is Al Green singing "Put Your Head Against My Shoulder," which is a country song, right? So it's almost like a fusion, the father and son coming together in this kind of, shared act of resistance. I think it's really beautiful.
What do you think about the title and the film's relationship, if it has one in particular, to American policing, or maybe American media and portrayals of policing? There's some talk about it. I mean, maybe it's only one or two lines. The title, obviously the red, white and blue, appears in the Union flag, but it's really associated, that phrase, I think, with the American flag.
I suppose. I think it's a very pointed title, There
are lots of shots in scene setting of portraits of the Queen on walls.
Yes.
And they're not just shots from like the audience's perspective, they're John Boyega's character noticing them.
Yes.
And they're often in police stations, so he has the kind of trappings of empire around him.
Yes.
And he notices that. And that's kind of what he's come in to disrupt in some respects.
Except, thinking back on those, because, for me, being raised in Canada, it's an interesting thing because, British people behave as if, the Queen is theirs. And as if what she represents only to them, right? But I was thinking of that scene, the Queen would have been his queen as well. Not only because he was born in Britain, but also, if his father was Jamaican or Caribbean.
I think he was born in Jamaica, and that's what I was reading on the Slate article. It seemed to suggest he was born in Jamaica and came over here at a young age.
Yeah, so I think that scene could be read in different ways, because that would also be his queen, right? Or, his symbol of the establishment. So it could be read as a betrayal, i.e., that like something that is meant to uphold the establishment, but nonetheless, it's kind of excluding you, and that is also the representative of your establishment. So, anyway, just a thought, just thinking aloud here, that the Queen is a symbol for various peoples and in different ways.
Well, I think in the context of this film and this story, and the idea that Leroy is deliberately and knowingly, trying to change the system. I think those portraits of the Queen, there's a representational strategy of using those, I think, in kind of representing the system. That's why they appear in these police stations. That's why.
Well, also there's all those badges, right, with her initials on them. And so
oh yeah.
I found the relationship between the father and son, which is really at the heart of this film, incredibly beautiful. Because you get the sense of like you know, a generational thing and an aspect of self-sacrifice, because you feel that the father would have really fought his case, would have wanted to have his day in court, and that actually choosing not to pursue that is a sacrifice for his son. Yeah. So, I mean, it's never explicitly stated, but I think it is communicated. And then the result of that is that he's beaten down. Yeah, he becomes less than himself, and at the end, you see him drinking alone, right? Though, you know, the son comes in to share that drink, which again is another lovely touch, I think. Yeah, but the father has been diminished, by this.
But I think the reason that last scene is so beautiful is because the son has been diminished as well by his treatment within the police, with the racist abuse written on his locker, and being passed over for promotion due to pretty much clearly racist reasons, or they're not given as such. And you know, I maybe it wasn't clear that because I didn't catch everything in the final conversation. I must say, I don't know if he told his dad that that's what had happened, but it certainly in his demeanour, it appeared that he was in the same kind of emotional state as his dad, and that's the basis for a reconciliation between them of a sort.
I mean, the ending in a way didn't make sense to me until, you know, I was just reading the wiki page before we started talking, just trying to remember names. But then actually it made sense, yeah? So, because, you know, I didn't realize that this was based on a real person, you know, that this real person became a success, that, you know, he was awarded the MBE or whatever, and, you know, and yeah. So you know, the clink with the glasses and the, you know, the conversation with the father is, again, the struggle continues. So there is like, there was like this sense of being kind of beaten or diminished, but it's not over, it's not the end, And actually, I think if you have a knowledge that this is based on real people, then that becomes clearer as an ending. Yeah,
sure. And it's a return to that small acts thing I was talking about in the first podcast about Mangrove, where it's about one person's story, one person's actions contribute to a much, much bigger picture. And that's kind of quite obvious here. And it was only when you said small acts earlier that I realised that it can be a pun. Acts. Yeah. That's good. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah. I mean, I imagine that it's like a Caribbean pronunciation of acts.
Well, like I said in the first podcast, I think I said that it comes from, I think, a Bob Marley song. I don't know if it was a pre-existing phrase before that.
Right, okay.
The idea that we're the small axe and you're the big tree.
Right, okay.
So, but I don't know if that is a pre-existing Caribbean phrase or if that was something Bob Marley wrote. But
it could connote both, I suppose.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten you'd say that, actually. You'd said that.
You must listen.
Well, I do listen. Though, you know, I suppose I could always listen better. True of everyone.
Talk about John Boyega a bit.
Oh, he was wonderful.
Because you love him, and you kept saying, what a star.
Well, you see, the thing is that I had Gary Oldman in mind, So they're both very expressive. They both communicate the feeling that the character is supposed to be experiencing, right?
Right, they're technically capable.
Yeah, but the difference between John Boyega and
Oldman,
to me, is that Boyega also draws you in. He enables you to empathize. So it's not just that you understand what he's feeling, but that you empathize with him feeling it, right? Whereas with Gary Oldman, there's always this distance. You know, he never draws me in. I understand him, but he neither charms nor creates an empathy. Right, whereas I think Boyega does, and actually I think that's why to me Boyega's a star. He can make you understand why he feels the way he does and share in that feeling.
I agree.
And you know, you can't stop looking at him. And actually, it's not even because he's handsome, which usually is my weakness. You know, you're staring because they're so handsome. No, it's just, you know, he's got a face that's alive. That you're waiting to see what he's feeling, really.
Yeah, I agree.
So
he conveys an awful lot with the shift of his eyes or something like that.
Yeah,
and he does that a lot here when he's like, and it's sort of very notable. He looks from one character to another when he's in the initial interview, putting his application into the police, and there were 3 officers sat on the other side of a desk. He's only talking to the one in the middle who's kind of taking the interview. But he keeps looking at the other 2, and he takes a second to look at each one, and it's just moving his eyes, doesn't move his head, And I noticed it anyway. It's like he conducts himself really professionally, the character, and something that goes along with that, at least for him, is stillness, not speaking until he's spoken to, only saying what's sort of necessary, like behaving professionally, doing just what's right, and what's right in this situation, and all that's necessary is looking to the other officers to acknowledge their presence.
Yes.
You know.
Well, I think that's also a sign of a star. That stillness. Because they have the security that people will be looking at them. You don't need to constantly be doing things to be drawing attention. You can be still and trust that people will look at you. And then the other thing about Boyega is that he's so charming, right? There are moments where he's laughing, and it's almost like he makes you want to laugh with him. That it's kind of like a ray of sunshine or something, like his smile. It kind of, it creates a mood. And I think it's very important in this particular film, right? Because the film itself is so dour that you need somebody like, charismatic and charming and almost life-affirming in the central role. And I wanted to mention also a couple of things about the film that I've forgotten earlier, which is its inclusivity, right? So it's very important that Leroy's cousin is gay. It's very important in the film, and it's a sign of the skill that McQueen has, that you get the sense of his oppression as a gay man, including by his family members. The father walking in, but nonetheless dancing with his cousin, right? So you get like these different sides to a story. Everything is kind of multi-layered, right? And then in contrast to that, I think it's also very important that when Leroy goes into the police mess hall and says, "Nobody backed me up," that it's not all men, that there are women there, right? Which actually would have been very easy in the period to just do all men in that mess hall. But no, he includes women there, right? So this is not an issue only of gender or whatever. It's an issue of race, and women are complicit. And also you see, that if there's a hierarchy of power, in that case, the women are with the men because of their whiteness. So I think the film is full of little things like that make it just so rich.
I wanted to ask, and if this is too personal, I'm perfectly happy for it to just not go anywhere, be cut out. But I was curious about what you mentioned, the bit where the dad walks in onto them dancing.
Yes.
Because at that moment, Leroy's really being sort of cast out by his family for this.
Yes.
He ends up sort of cast out from the community,
yes,
pretty much, because they're not happy with the black guy policing him. Especially black guy who a lot of them know. He's from the area. But that bit in particular, was that resonant to you, or do you think it's especially resonant because of how you were treated when you were younger?
Well, no, I mean, that in a way is so far advanced than what I would have been capable of, I mean, to be dancing with another boy in your house, I mean, I would just never have done it, right? Like, it was just not within the realm of the possible for me. No, I thought what was beautiful about that scene was how in one moment, and this is why, I'm using the word dramatic, it distills all of these things, both, the fact that the cousin is gay, the fact that Leroy is not, the affection and bond between them, they're dancing together, so, kind of clearly the Leroy character is not homophobic. The father walks in, then they all stop, right? And then actually the response to the father going away, where he continues dancing, and it's very important that it's Leroy who breaks the tension and starts off the dancing, right? To make his cousin feel okay, right? So, kind of, there's so much going on in a moment like that, right? Yeah. And I think it's, I mean, obviously I'm probably bringing a lot of my history and understanding as a gay man to this, but I think it's there. I think it's, these things have been thought through in terms of these questions, and I think this is why the film is so beautiful and rich.
Was that his cousin, or aren't they mates, him and Lee?
I think, well, I thought it was his cousin because the mother, where they go have that Sunday lunch, right? The father tells her, "This is your fault, that the son has gone into the police. You with your buzz."
Right.
He mentioned something about the son, so I assume that's his sister and their family, right? Maybe not.
It wasn't clear to me. I thought they were family friends, but I don't know.
Well, I think they're cousins, but whether they're family friends or cousins, I suppose it's not that important.
Yeah. I was just asking because if you'd noticed something I hadn't.
All right. Well, I was just assuming they were cousins.
Yeah. The final thing I would say, and I think this is, I suppose, why I think it's the weakest of the three, but as you said, it's a relative thing. These three films are of a very, very high standard. They're really good. Is that I think it lent a little too hard on cliche or on tropes. I felt like I could predict where it was going. Maybe that's not that fair a criticism, because who says it should have to surprise me like that? And maybe it's that in the scenes it's kind of imaginative and effective and so on. All I mean is I suppose it grabbed me less than the other two.
Okay, there was a couple of moments where I thought, that kind of it resonated, though it might have just seemed slightly cliche-ish because it's stereotypes are stereotypes for a reason. I did think that the film avoided most of them, right? In all kinds of ways, yeah. Who the father is, what his job is, his attitudes, the son being a PhD going to the police as opposed to, a cliche would have been to be a little gang leader and things like that, right? So I think the film avoided cliches very much, and what it avoided, which again, I apologize for constantly comparing it to American cinema, but that is a point of reference. It avoided that feeling of smugness. Yeah, in which kind of you get the feeling that people know all the answers, or people have all the answers, right? In that family picture, there would have been an aunt or somebody who would have preached you the gospel of how things should be, right, or how she knows things are. There's nothing like that here, right? So,
no.
Which I liked very much and I appreciated.
No, it's a family that's really genuinely struggling with things that are new to them or challenging.
Yes, with assimilation, or with the inability to assimilate, or with being prevented from assimilating. All those things. Because also, the type of migration or immigration that you have here is different. And I think the shock must have been greater. So, for example, when my family immigrated to Canada, they immigrated. So actually you expect to be inferior. It's not your country. Yeah, you are being led in, through the grace of others, right? Into this land of opportunity. So, it's not right that people treat you badly, but also, kind of in some ways it's understandable. The difference with, what do they call, although the people who came on that boat and then were sent away again,
the Windrush
generation, is that they were British, right? And actually that would have been true of Canadians in that period. I mean, you come here as a citizen. It's your place as much as when a British person goes to Jamaica, it's their place. You are both British. Yeah, you're both British. So, yeah, the sense of betrayal or anger or, kind of being mistreated like that, must have been even greater. Yeah, she's their queen too. It's their country too, right? So, yeah.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. And in fact, when they basically told you don't need papers, passport, anything like that, because you are British citizens, you can move here, and then 50 years down the line, they're told by Theresa May, where are your papers?
Exactly.
Yeah,
so
it's fucking disgusting.
Yeah. So, but in relation to the film, it's a different type of migration, yeah? It's a migration home as opposed to a migration away from home, yeah, in some ways. Anyway, I think it's great and you should all see it.
And it's on iPlayer like the rest of them.
Yes.
And, the 4th and 5th, at the time of recording, haven't yet come out. The 4th is on tonight, I think.
Right.
And then the 5th in a week, I guess.
Right. So we will continue with this fascinating series. Do let us know kind of what you think of both, the individual episodes and, our commentary. And in the meantime, thank you very much for listening. We are eavesdropping at the movies, and we are on
Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud and YouTube. On social media, we're on Facebook and Twitter. And the website is eavesdroppingatthemovies.com.
Thank you very much for listening.
Bye-bye.